Second.
Second.
Got a second from Norbert. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I did not know who made that motion or seconded it.
For the,
Steve Whitten made the initial motion.
Thank you.
this
And
this
the
is
second,
this is
I
Andy.
can't-
For the record. These are the February minutes we're approving.
Oh,
It's the agenda was corrected, so I apologize. But
okay. Sorry. Yes. The February meeting minutes.
and who made that second, please?
Norbert.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Andrew. So we do have a quorum. Okay, let's move on to Sergeant Mills with waterway crime and boating safety report.
During the month of February, the Marine Unit issued 48 citations, 79
We can't hear anyone.
Okay, good. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that. For the month of February, the Marine Unit
Baseball.
48 citations, 78 warnings, conducted 14 safety inspections, handled 3 accidents, and we had a total of 2 burglaries. One where there was a loss of $1,200, but the victim declined to prosecute. A GPS unit was stolen by an unknown person. And then last week we had a burglary of approximately 6 vessels directly across from our office over on 15th Street. There was a loss of approximately $28,000 in Garmin GPS units. The good thing is that there was video up and down the seawall where the burglary took place, and there's video of the culprit leaving. There's actually some fairly decent that we got from the cameras in the boats. So I'm hoping that this one will be cleared up before too long. And then that was all lumped in with the second night burglary just down the block by the same individual. So our detective bureau has a lead on possible culprit. So hopefully we'll be solving that one shortly. And one of the accidents was the jet ski rentals, which is starting to become a bit of a problem because they're not, most of the people who rent them aren't familiar with the operation of the skis. So they don't know when they let off on the throttle that they have no steering. So they come in hot sometimes, and but no major injuries on those type of boating accidents. So other than that, the only thing we have coming up, we have the air show coming up in a couple months.
Yep.
Which is
Was it
scheduled
May
May
7th?
May 7th and 8th, I believe.
8 and 9.
8, 9. Okay.
8, 9. Yeah.
Yeah.
Weekend. But it's my understanding that all the permits have not been approved quite yet, but that was kind of the same thing that happened in the one in November, got the last minute approvals. So same company this year is going to be the Blue Angels as the main show.
Awesome.
And that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
Yeah,
for me.
questions for Sergeant Mills? Ward?
Hey, I have one question, Grant. This is Bill Walker. Sergeant, what kind of involvement has FLPD been with either FWC or the Coast Guard on illegal charters?
So the Coast Guard for like the last year and a half has been doing a high visibility illegal charters program, and Station Fort Lauderdale is definitely involved in it. We're involved in it with the Coast Guard as far as they've requested that when we see a vessel that is suspected of illegal charters, that we report it to them. They've been great. They've been coming out and handling the information gathering and determining whether or not it's legal or not. So
Okay. And then, go ahead.
I don't know what FWC's response is. I know the Coast Guard has reached out to all the local agencies, and I'm only assuming that they've contacted FWC.
Got it. And the, so we had an incident, not we water taxi wise, but there was an incident up about a week ago up at boat campers where this illegal charter came in. These guys were completely out of control of how they operated the boat. And one of the charter guys fell in the water. Everyone's wasted. And the captain thinks he's going to back down in this 45-foot boat with a swim platform, pick this guy up out of the water. And my guys just happen to be standing there, you know, telling everybody like, hey, back off, leave these guys alone. But like, if I call you guys, is that the best thing? I know the Coast Guard, but it's like, who's the first response? Because these guys started getting into rowdiness and
So
my guys and whatnot, you know, which I would call you for sure, you know, but.
So the first thing that, because of the way the situation started to develop, you would call us first.
Yep.
And,
Okay.
Depending on the time of the day, because my guys, our shift is usually up by 5 o'clock. Sometimes most of the time we have somebody working the grant, but
Yep.
if that starts to escalate in something a little bit higher, I would try to raise a Marine unit officer on the VHF. And if that's not possible, call the non-emergency number, and then they can dispatch us to the call. And
Right.
then I would call the Coast Guard for the illegal charter. The Coast Guard is not going to be able to do a whole lot for like the altercation or
Right. Correct.
But our guys, and then worst case scenario, if we don't have somebody on the water and it's at boat campers at the dock, they can always send a land unit. So
Sure.
that would be the route that I would go. I would try to go VHF first because that's probably going to be the easiest. Then calling the non-emergency or emergency number, depends on how high it escalates.
Sure.
And then call the Coast Guard. And if my guys are en route, we'll call the Coast Guard as well.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Because it's becoming more problematic all around the city with these illegal charters.
So one of the problems that we run into, sometimes people when they see an illegal charter or something going on, they like to call our office, my office, or my phone number, and where that is kind of the wrong thing to do because most of the time we're on the water. So if you call our office or you call my office on a Friday when I'm off on the weekend, I don't get that call until Monday, and there's no way I can send anybody out to assist anybody. So, and it also helps if you call the non-emergency number because it helps us track the statistics, the locations, things like that, and issues case numbers. So there's definitely a tracking for those types of incidents. So
awesome. Thank you.
First and then non-emergency. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
Anything else for Sergeant Mills? Okay. Item number 4. Oh, sorry. Item number 5. The Riverwalk Seawall discussion. We have Gina Ellis presenting.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may share my screen.
Of course.
Okay. My name is Gina Ellis. I'm from Riverwalk, Fort Lauderdale. Our job primarily is the oversight of the Riverwalk and the Riverwalk district. This is just an example of our territory, our footprint. As you'll notice, we have a nice chunk of the New River in the core of downtown. Sorry, this thing is jumping. What we would like to talk to you about primarily is the fact that our seawalls in the downtown and all over the city, but specifically in the downtown, are deteriorating. DC walls were constructed back in the late 80s and finished over the succeeding 30 years. What we find is that those seawalls are only repaired on an emergency basis. There's no foreplanning in how to maintain them in a reasonable fashion. We know that with sea level rise and the desire to dredge the New River, the attention to detail to these walls is critical today. In 2018, a report was provided to the city from BCC Engineering giving an assessment of the existing seawalls. That report is in a public records. It's actually on the city's webpage if you would like to track it. It gave, in today's dollars in 2018, what their forecast was for the funding that was needed to make those repairs. One of the things that we wanted to point out to you as a part of that, and this is just a small comparison for you, Riverwalk, under our task, also went out and had surveys and studies done and forecasts for what we believe to be needed for those same specific areas. One of the things in the city study was not any addressing of new seawalls, and there are many areas along this particular section of the Riverwalk that don't have seawalls and are in need of them. Also not included in the assessment was the fact that these seawalls abut a pedestrian walkway. Repairing the seawall, if your walkway above is the catalyst for the undermining, you need to look a little further than just the wall itself. So what we've done is just given you just a relative comparison here of what our forecast was and what the city's forecast was. More importantly, just so you know, we took a trip, thank you, Bill Walker, for facilitating us with a boat, with the city manager, the director of public works, the director of parks and recreation, and other city staff, so that the city officials actually could see the deterioration from the water side. Not something easily done if you can't get on the water. So what we've done is just given you some small pictorials of the kind of things that we know are falling apart, basically. And all I'm doing at this point is just walking through some of the examples of the types of failures that we're seeing. It comes from just years of use. Areas that there are no seawalls that are now with the king tides and the new sea level rise are flooding over onto land. So building a seawall adjacent to it doesn't help if you're not doing something contiguous. In connection with those seawalls, what you'll see is the undermining of those seawalls is creating a failure of the walkway that attaches to it. So the objective here is just to show you where literally seawalls have now moved inland and they're unsafe. The city has, as you may know, has just finished their prioritizing of their commission priorities for this year. Under resiliency, the city has identified city-owned seawalls along the New River and the downtown, which is the Riverwalk docking on the north and the south side. All of this, while is important, the most important piece of this is it remains unfunded. There are opportunities through FIND to apply for grants to do it over a phased time period. It would require that the city have plans in place and permitting in place to proceed. That is not ongoing as we speak. It's our desire to encourage you to assist us in encouraging the commission to take those next steps to raise this in that priority level. We believe that this waterway and these seawalls are an enormous part of the economic engine in downtown and in the city of Fort Lauderdale. And we think that the time has come when we need to address that. So my presentation to you is to tell you that we are failing with our seawalls, and we're hopeful that you as our marine partners will, encourage that be moved up in the priority and funded. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Gina?
I have a quick question / comment. The south side of the Riverwalk, from the 7th Avenue, 4th Avenue Bridge, all the way through the 3rd Avenue Bridge on the south side, has substantial vacuum pump systems for sewage systems. And this system has been problematic for years in terms of operations. And I think this is something that also should be strongly considered with the seawall issues. The seawall issues, as Gina said, we went out on the boat and took a number of the city officials around at an extremely low tide and was like, okay, well, these are big things. But we as a board have talked a lot about water quality, and I'm not going to get into the details of what happened to me as a company, but it's something that needs to be considered right alongside this whole thing with the seawalls. So,
Andrew?
Bill, I can also point out on that south side, and many of you will recognize it. Aesthetically, when building the Riverwalk, there was a period when having steps down to the water were considered a really cool thing to do. And the south side is full of those stairways that come down. But what you're finding is because of the flooding, it also pulls down anything that's upland that's along there it ends up right back into the river. So the raising of the seawalls and the repair of the seawalls need to be done at the same time.
Barry, did you have a comment?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Gene, I certainly applaud you're bringing this to the proper authorities. And unfortunately, there's a long history. And I think back in 05, 08, when we were trying to get money for the seawall grants or matching funds at different times, we addressed that those seawalls on the north side were then, I think, over 60 years old. So you'd add another 10 years to them perhaps today. I think it was around 2010, the city put some type of a Band-Aid approach to seawall retention, and they placed sheets on the outside of the pilings and poured concrete behind it to the wall. I don't know that that method was ever tried anywhere, but it's been pretty, it hasn't done what it was supposed to do. You can see places now where the water from the river is coming up through the grass and perhaps eroding some of the pavers that you referred to there. I believe twice we had requested funds to find. Matching funds may have been identified or allocated, but when the time came, the funds were pulled. And I certainly hope that doesn't happen this time. I also think there was at least one and possibly two worker comp claims that were filed against the city by employees who I know one of them fell in down by the in front of the Caribbean area there, and I believe broke a hip falling in a hole. He was an inspector doing work on one of the buildings there. It's unfortunate. I don't know how many departments the city has that generate the income and the money that the marine industry does. And it's a shame that it continues to fall on deaf ears and perhaps blind eyes that this continues on. So hopefully, Gina, this time we can see some results.
Thank you, Barry. I'm singing to the choir, I'm sure. But I believe that having had discussions with Fine and with the opportunities that are there, the thing that we are lacking most right now is a definitive set of drawings and a permit and the city's willingness to match. You know, Fine is a 50% match. Yep. So spread out over time based on the need, it would cost the city literally 50% less than if they funded it out of their CIP or their stormwater funds. So we think that it's a valid approach. We're just hoping that we'll get enough hands raised to support that.
Excuse me, Chair, this is Robin.
Go ahead, Robin.
I'd like to make a motion to support that.
Well, I mean, we're not really we can make a communication to the commission, right, Angie, but it's really not.
This is Norbert here. Been in the marine construction business most of the time down here in Florida. I worked for the company that did the maintenance that still has contract, I think, I don't know, that still has contract with the city of Fort Lauderdale regarding the seawalls. They have, in my opinion, have made a drastic mistake, like Barry said, by putting the Band-Aid on the north side of the New River where you're talking about on the Riverwalk. What they basically did is, like Barry said, they put what they call a footer wall. It's a small wall that's in front of the main wall. And the reason they did that is in 2005, 2006, I was asked and did a survey on the seawall and found it to be undermined, that there's some places that I could actually swim under the seawall when we had some of those large wedding boats, the charters on there. And it was found to have enough of an opening that not only was behind the seawall going out, so they decided to put the Band-Aid on there by putting a little footer wall in front of that. So how that's done is they move a footer wall out maybe a foot or 18 inches in front of the main wall, and they pour concrete behind that little footer wall. And this was supposed to stop the erosion. And what they basically did, they poured the concrete around the existing fender piles that the boats that are docked on there, they poured that around it. Now, two things happened. One, you can't get that pile out when that wooden pile starts to deteriorate. If you do manage to get it out, how do you get a new one in other than putting that in front of that little footer wall? And it hasn't really stopped anything. You still have the erosion and stuff taking place and everything else, because the footer wall, in order to be effective, would have to go down maybe 2, 3, or 4 feet down into the berm, which it didn't. It only went down as far as they could get it down there and fill concrete behind it. And I said, I haven't been in there in recent years, but I can see by the way that the seawall is deteriorating on the back, or the ground is going in the back, that it has not worked. But I just wanted to bring it to your attention that that was done, I want to say, probably 8 to 10 years ago. And that little footer wall was in there. So thank God we haven't tried to pull any of those piles out yet. That should be interesting when they do that, because how do you get a new one in? And by doing that, by the way, you actually took the river, and it's not as wide, because now something like the Carrie B is now docked another 1.5 feet or so away from the wall, because the pile is out in front of that little footer wall where it used to be up against the seawall. So you're shortening the river by putting those pile on the outside, just to let you know. And I said that I was involved in when they were doing that Band-Aid.
Okay, Andrew, I mean, again, we're not here. We're not voting on anything on this. We're not.
Well, the board can make a communication to the commission.
Yeah, sure.
Supporting this repair.
Yeah.
Would someone have to pass a motion to initiate that communication?
No, we just have to scribe a motion. So I think, can we forward this presentation onto the commission with our support of it, or are we just, you want to just does somebody want to put a communication together?
Yeah, I think a blanket communication.
Yeah, blanket communication would
Well,
be.
I mean, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, this is Kitty McGowan. I mean, like, we're the Venice of America. And it's kind of funny, as I've only served on this board for several years, and we will hold private citizens to a standard of maintaining their property at a certain level, and yet as the city, we aren't even keeping our facilities up to a minimum level. And as Barry pointed out, in other cities, like in Miami-Dade County, the marine industry supports itself and is a funding source for itself and for the city. I mean, I know that the setup here is different from down there, but it's kind of crazy to me where this is such a massive economic boost for this city, the community, and South Florida, that we've neglected the massive infrastructure that we have here. How do we seriously send a message to the commission that we make this really truly move forward?
Well, let's put a communication together to the commission. We can.
I'm happy to work with anybody on that in any regard.
Let's do one right now.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, this is Bridget.
Hi, Bridget.
Do we need to open this to the public first?
Sure. Let's open it to the public. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak further on the matter? Okay, back to the board. Kitty, is there
Yes.
some ideas that comes to mind that you'd like to put down that Bridget can take down that we can then prove?
Well, I guess my question comes back to Andrew and the team on staff. Is there a current plan in terms of, in maintaining infrastructure in the city that's like a timeline thing that at this point these docks get dealt with, or at this point these seawalls get addressed? Because I mean it seems like everything's been vastly neglected. I mean, and I know they're fighting on multiple fronts with the sewage issues and other things. And to add this to the pile might be like a tilting at windmills here. But Andrew, is there a process by which the seawalls are addressed for maintenance and maintaining our own standards? I mean, we had Dr. Nancy Gassman talking about raising seawalls and maintaining those things, and yet we don't do that ourselves. Is there a process that happens?
Kitty, yes, this is Andrew. I agree with everything you've said as far as the need. There have been fixes along the way, repairs, if you will, that one of which was mentioned tonight. Is there a master plan for seawalls? I'm not aware of one, but that would be developed by the Public Works Group and city engineering. So I think at this point, based upon the presentation, what would be advantageous would be a communication to the commission, reinforcing the opinion of the board. And that would be the first step.
Okay, yeah, because I wasn't sure what the process is here in regards to that, because I mean, obviously by the photos that Gina has shared, I mean, it's not just a little bit dire, it's fairly significant. And as we go through, coming into hurricane season and increasingly significant high tides and king tides, it's only going to vastly, rapidly deteriorate. So, all right. So, I mean, I know that there was another person that made a motion to communicate with the commission. I'm happy to second that. Or
well, this is Steve. I think there was also, as Chair suggested, what are we asking for, or what would we like to accomplish here? And I assume there must be a capital budget in place that at least addresses some of the seawall repairs over the next year and perhaps long term. Would we have access to that, Andrew?
So would you have access to it? Yes, it would be public record if it was the case. I cannot speak to that, but I do not believe that there is a master plan for seawalls. I can reach out to Public Works and get a confirmation on that. But I think tonight, what would be most advantageous would be a communication, a sentence or two, if you wish, to support the renovation.
What about something along the lines of getting seawall rehabilitation back on the agenda of the next commission meeting? Something like work out, or I mean, or
I think that the agenda is not. We wouldn't be setting that agenda, yeah. But I think that motion of support. I can't write the communication for you, yeah. But a motion of support for the direction of prioritizing the seawalls as the city moves forward with the parks bond, or however you want to say that.
Okay, well, we could put a. Norbert, go ahead.
Okay. I was just saying basically what we need to do is they don't need to put another Band-Aid on it. They need to replace that seawall similar to what they did off of Cordova Road. In other words, it has to be an entire new seawall with a new in it, because right now I would venture to say you couldn't raise the height of that seawall, because I don't think if an engineer looked at it that anything you put on top of that seawall, the seawall itself would not sustain the additional weight. So what I'm saying is you can't put another Band-Aid, you can't raise it and stuff until which time that you would address the fact of making a new seawall similar to what they did in Cordova Road. Thank you.
Okay, well then let's work on some verbiage here. Let's get a sentence out or two so we can.
Last thing I'd say, just to put that on the record, is like, it is amazing the sea level rise, the maximum minimum height you should build to for new seawalls. That whole area is failing miserably. The water that's coming in around the whole Icon area is unbelievable. So, and it's destroying infrastructure. So,
I mean, but with all that development, was there no part in the development of those parcels that included infrastructure support and redevelopment of the waterway that they're sitting on?
Or some kind of bonding for it. Yeah.
That's
you'd
what I
think
mean,
so.
is that, I mean, is in terms of, I mean, like these giant buildings, I mean, it's a canyon going down New River now. Do they not have to put into some sort of fund to support the water that they sit on?
They actually pay into the parks bond. The parks, there's a parks.
So it's part of the parks bond.
No.
So
I misspoke. It's part of there's an infrastructure pool that they pay into that the parks department is able to pull out of for things. They do pay for their infrastructure. That is covered under there. The waterway is not included in that. But there is a study and a plan that was done by the city in 2018 that has all of those things identified and ready to move forward. I mean, implementing their own plan would be a good start.
Well, that would be unique and good.
That was done by Public Works, and it's in the city domain.
Okay, so we want something along the lines of the Marine Advisory Board urges the commission to readdress the rehabilitation of the seawalls along the New River in downtown Fort Lauderdale.
I might say, just to support Norbert's position, is that not rehabilitation, but replacement of, because those seawalls are so old and obviously so no longer structurally sound that rehabilitating them is past, that it's replacement at this point.
Okay.
What they need is a comprehensive master plan to guide them forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sure seems that way.
Can we also include a financial component that touches on accessing any available funds? From what Gina expressed, it appears that we're leaving money on the table. And I think we just need to maximize our funding opportunities to the greatest extent possible.
Yes, because some of that park money that they're giving to that park pool could go to support a 50% support of Find, because Find is very supportive of infrastructure development. So I think that would be great. Good idea.
Okay. So do you want to expand upon the statement to the commission?
I needed to be started from the beginning, please.
Right. So was Marine Advisory Board supports or urges the commission to address the rebuilding of the seawalls downtown Fort Lauderdale and provide a master plan and the financials that go along with that moving forward, something along that. Bill?
Yeah, I think something like that. I mean, you might as well include them all. One of the things we dealt with over the years on this board is like dredging. We find out a lot of these canals have head walls and things like that where drains are coming out. It's like, okay, are these sea walls creating problems? But a master plan, as Cliff said, that's what we need. And I'm not making a statement.
That. No, I agree.
Bridget, do you have something that you could read back? Or do you want me to repeat that?
The Marine Advisory Board urges the City Commission to address the rebuilding of the seawalls in downtown Fort Lauderdale. 1 second. And to provide a master plan and financials in order to move forward. I'm not sure about that last part.
Yeah.
In downtown Fort Lauderdale and provide a master plan and financials to move forward.
Maybe request a master plan and a budget for review.
Yeah, that's better, Steve.
This is, we've spent almost this whole meeting and in listening to everybody, not only from quality of life, et cetera, but insofar as being such a significant income generator to the town, to simply table this and hope that it's going to be carried forward is real frustrating. So hopefully they'll report back to us by the next meeting if that's fair to request.
And Bridget, in addition to that, a statement put down in downtown Fort Lauderdale along the New River.
Okay. Okay. The Marine Advisory Board urges the City Commission to address the rebuilding of the seawalls in downtown Fort Lauderdale along the New River and to request a master plan and budget for review. For review by who?
Was that not to be for implementation?
Yeah, that's my thought, is that for implementation. And then also, since you're talking about it, I mean, like, look at some of the docks down there are completely dismal, and some of the power stanchions down there are pretty grim as well. I mean, think about the money generators that all those facilities down there are bringing in every day, and yet they're still vastly neglected.
Okay, so, and request a master plan and budget for implementation. Ms. McGowan, is that what you?
Yeah, I would say that sounds better because
I think that sounds better. That's good.
Without a doubt. Well done.
All right, so is Ms. McGowan going to make that communication?
Sure. I'll move that.
Can we just touch on taking advantage of available grant opportunities? Because what I'm hearing from Gina is that there's a grant on the table, and I don't know if we capture that in what we say with the budget portion of your communication.
That's actually a really valid point, because thinking that it's going to come all out of city funds might be a little bit daunting. Say, to support grants through Find and other sources that might be available. Because I mean, you guys are really, Andrew and your whole team over there are really very good at finding these other sources of revenue to support infrastructure development. So, I mean, I think that's a really good point, so that it's not that it's the city's going to have to eat the whole thing themselves. And plus, we might be able to get stuff from the state as well.
Well, in theory, when the master plan gets together and they form a team with the stakeholders, hopefully all these items will be discussed and brought up. And it's the Port Everglades had a very similar master plan over the years. They've done many master plans and had all the stakeholders involved. And that was the time that everyone got to bring all the issues to bear. So I don't know how the city works with their master plan type process, if it's internal or they invite the stakeholders. But certainly if they do invite the stakeholders, that would be the opportunity to bring up funding options and things like that.
Okay. Is there anything else that needs to be, anything that needs to be added?
I guess one question I have, is there a plan out there already or no? Does this need to be funded?
Andrew, you didn't think there was anything in the process of the
Well, there apparently was a study done that Gina's reporting back in 2018. So I can try to get more information on whether or not a master plan was put together at that point, but I'm not aware of one. It was handled, as I said, by Public Works and Engineering.
Andrew, is that where that budget came from that Gina had?
Yes, that's where it came from. It was part of that study. That was part of the master plan that was generated in 2018.
Well, that's not that old, and it identifies North Seawall, South Seawall, and other things. Why can't we refer to that and see if they...
That's understood. So I think it's important for me to explain the process of communication to commission. once this communication commission is put together, voted upon, I will make the board aware of which city commission conference agenda it will be placed on. At that meeting, you will have a chance as individual board members, general public, to speak to the importance of this issue. So if a communication is assembled, you will have a chance to get before the commission, likely within 6 weeks, pretty typically within a month, to address this.
Oh, that's great.
Keep that in mind, because I know we've done these before, and then we have these, you have that opportunity and nobody shows up. So keep that in mind if you're passionate.
This is not something we can push down the road any further. I mean, this is part of our livelihood. And as we come out of COVID coma, people are getting back out, and people are coming here, and this is our lifeblood of this community. It's always been the waterways, and we're just letting it crumble before our eyes. And so I agree. Thank you, Andrew, for that clarification, and I'll fully support that.
So Andrew, do we have to make a motion on this communication, or can we just say that we're pushing it forward?
There needs to be a motion.
Okay, do we have a motion on the floor to present this communication to the commission?
Yes,
I'll make a motion. This is Robin.
Okay.
Kitty McGowan will second.
Okay, Bridget, do you want a voice vote, or how do you want to do a vote?
That would be fine. That would be fine.
Just all those in favor, or do you want to go individually?
Oh, as long as there's anybody opposed, would just speak up clearly.
Yeah, let's do that. Anybody opposed to this communication sent to the commission? There you have it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Okay.
Which is agenda number 6, dock waiver 738 Northeast 20th Avenue, Hal Griffith, manager of HG Middle River Investments. And I believe we have Tyler Chappelle. So Tyler, you there?
I'm here. Actually, Kat Bongerstone is also on here, and she'll be doing the presentation. And I'll be here assisting with answering any questions that the board may have.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. This is Kat. Like Tyler said, I will be presenting this evening, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so we are here this evening to present on behalf of the applicant, which is HG Middle River Investments, LLC, care of Mr. Hal Griffith. And the property is located at 738 Northeast 20th Avenue in Fort Lauderdale. There we go, a little bit of delay. So this is an aerial photograph of the property located right here on Northeast 20th Avenue. This is an aerial photo from the southern portion of the property facing north. And here is an aerial from the north side of the property facing south. This is a view from the east facing west, and the property is located right here. And this is a view from the west facing east. And you can see this property is located in a pretty wide portion of the Middle River. So this is the existing layout for the site. There's an existing sheet pile seawall and some existing wood mooring piles that we have currently on the site that are actually going to be removed. And there's 2 existing slips as well. What we are proposing is the installation of a 4-foot wide marginal dock right here, and a finger pier that will extend 75 feet off of the marginal dock. We are also proposing the installation of 8 triple pile mooring clusters So you can see, and you'll see more clearly where those are all located, but there's 8 that are located extending into the Middle River. And we're proposing to keep the 2 slips that are currently on site. This is a cross-sectional view. So we have the existing wall here, and then we're proposing the finger pier extending out into the water with the triple pile clusters. Here is the existing conditions again, just with the distance across the waterway shown. So on the northern part of the site, it's about 572 feet across the waterway. And on the southern portion of the site, it's about 680 feet across the waterway. And here is a distance exhibit with the proposed conditions. So you can see here we have all of the triple pile clusters called out. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's one right at the end of the finger pier. 5, 6, 7, and 8. And the triple pile clusters range from 54 feet from the property line, extending out to about 106.1 feet is the furthest triple pile cluster. And again, here you can just see the distance across the waterway. Again, on the north side, it's about 572 feet. And on the southern side, it's 680 feet across the waterway. Here's a table that breaks out all of the structures that we are requesting the distance waiver for. The finger pier is 84.1 feet from the property line. The allowable distance is 25 feet, and the distance requiring the waiver would be 59.1 feet. I'm not going to go through every one of these, but you can see there's 8 triple pile clusters, and they range, like I said, from 54 feet up to 106.1 feet. So the greatest distance that we are requesting the waiver for is 81.1 feet. So some of the extraordinary circumstances for this project and why we are requesting this waiver. All of the structures and piles will not exceed the 30% width of the waterway, and they're actually closer to about 15% of the waterway. Due to the extraordinary width of the water in this location, like I said, it's about 680 feet. This will not be an issue with navigation for this site, as the Middle River is extremely wide in this location. These structures are necessary to safely moor residents' vessels, especially during high wind events and severe weather. And the proposed project is consistent with waivers in the area that have been issued up to 125 feet. This perpendicular mooring is necessary in this location also to protect vessels from high wave energy. There is a water skiing and jet skiing area just to the east down the Middle River. So there's a lot of wave energy here, and the perpendicular mooring is necessary. Several neighbors in this area have provided letters of support. We have 7 neighbors, as you can see here, that have provided letters of support. The property is located right here at 738, and both directly adjacent neighbors have provided letters of support, as well as neighbors up and down the street. This area, as I'm sure many of you are aware, has many waivers that have already been issued in the past. This is an example of the waivers that have been issued along Northeast 20th Avenue, as well as across the waterway on Middle River Drive, as well as down to the southeast at 2407 Aqua Vista. The waivers that have been issued in this area vary from about 45 feet, actually 34.5 at Aqua Vista, but they extend up to 125 feet is the distance that has been previously approved in this area. This aerial just gives you a better idea of what the current conditions are in this area. And as you can see, the properties to the north, as well as to the south, have structures that extend out into the waterway at 125 feet. So to the south at 704, you can see these mooring piles are at 125 feet, and other properties along here all have consistent mooring piles. And we're actually requesting less than the 125 feet. We're requesting the 106.1 feet. And again, just across the waterway, you can see the other waivers that have been issued for 40, 60, 40. And again, up here to the north, you've got 112 and 124 feet. This site actually did have a resolution that was issued back in 1992, allowing triple pile clusters to be installed at 75 feet. This was under previous ownership, but the board has approved a resolution previously for this site. And with that, I will turn it back over if anyone has any questions.
Okay, board. Any questions for Catherine at the moment from the board? It seemed pretty straightforward. If not, we don't have anything from our board.
Sorry, I was on mute. This is Ed Strobel. Is this on the commercial or residential side on that street? I know at one point it changes from commercial to residential.
Right, so this is a residential property.
And does the owner have this yacht that he's putting back there, or is he planning to rent it illegally?
So either the owner, Hal Griffith, will be keeping his vessel on site, or if he decides to rent the house out, it would be someone who lived in the house would have their vessel at the site. So it would still meet the residential code.
Yeah, on the edge, okay.
Any other questions? Okay, we're going to open up to the public, and we have a few people that are here to speak, and I'm going to go through them. We'll start with William Smith. Would you like to go first? Are you here with us?
Yes, commissioners, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. If I could direct this to Ms. Bongazon, Bongazoni? Is that correct?
Bongazon, it's close.
Oh, I apologize.
That's okay.
I have a few questions. You mentioned the letters of support from the neighboring properties.
Yes.
Which of those neighboring properties have themselves been granted waivers?
I have not done a cross-reference, but we have letters of support from.
Maybe I should ask the question a different way. Are any of those letters of support from neighbors who've not been granted waivers?
Yes, I believe Joseph McDonald at 740 Northeast 20th Avenue. He does not have a waiver, and I can share my screen again so you can see. So this is the waivers that we have on our records for waivers that have been issued in this area. And so Mr. McDonald at 740 does not have a waiver. And
both neighbors directly adjacent do not have waivers, but are supporting.
Mr. Campbell, I apologize for this question, but what is the business plan for this investment firm?
I'm not aware of his business plan, but the application is to install a dock to better support the two vessels that are there, and potentially future vessels if he moves his vessel to this location.
And Mr. Chappelle, there are covenants in the zoning that requires a resident of that domicile in order for their boat to be docked there? In other words,
as Ms. Bongerson discussed, the understanding and condition of approval that we've had in the past on these residential zoning properties on 20th is that the owner of the property would keep the boat there, or if he chooses to rent the house, the renters would be the ones who'd have the boat there. And that's been conditioned in the past as well.
Mr. Chappelle, this dock would accommodate vessels of what length?
Kat, what is the two lengths of the slips that are shown?
100 feet.
And typically, if you could help me out here, guys, a 100-foot vessel would have a crew of what number approximately? Does anybody have any guess at what a 100-foot vessel would have in terms of crew?
2 to 3 to 4.
Would they be permanent or casual? Would they
Permanent.
reside on the vessel, or would they
Yeah.
commute to the vessel?
They would typically reside on the vessel in a 100-footer.
Either
Yes.
or.
Yeah.
Or either or.
Hi, this is Roseanne Lovell. I have 100-foot vessels that legally dock here at my slip, and I have no liveaboards.
Oh, that's really wow.
Folks, I live between 19th and 20th at the stop sign, Northeast 7th place. I'm 3 houses in. I'm the 4th house in. And I'm curious about how me and my surrounding neighbors and this neighborhood would benefit from this waiver.
I guess my question would be is how would you be detrimented?
Yeah,
We're all
exactly.
not-
That I
Yeah,
couldn't
we're
get to
not
my
always
button in time.
benefited by.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Can I presume from your response there is no benefit?
But then where's also the harm, as Roseanne said?
but
I
I
just
got-
couldn't get to my button in time.
But I got to ask the question first, so I'll let my point stand.
Okay.
If I could, I'll just wrap up and allow others to speak. I'm upset that I didn't object to previous efforts for these waivers that turn our neighborhood into a commercial zone, regardless of how the building, that sacrificial house in front of these docks, is purposed. But that being said, I am impressed by the presentation. I am assuaged of my concern that my 9-foot beam, 22-foot long Duffy electric boat will have no issues navigating the Middle River. This is of minimal impact to navigation, and except for the inconvenience of continual, perpetual construction on 20th, I'm in favor of this waiver.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ursula Jernich. I hope I have that right. Are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Tyler. Hope you're doing well.
Evening.
And this is Mr. Jim Jernich.
Yes, Jim Duranch. I just said hi to Tyler. I worked with him in the past.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Please continue.
I'm an engineer. Live at 714 Northeast 20th Avenue. My wife actually owns 704. I used to own large boats. At one point in time, I thought I wanted to put a large boat at my 714 address. Tyler actually helped me get waiver for that, which I never used. And unfortunately, I see the problems with having owned boats, constant maintenance, constant crews. I mean, we got diesel spills across our property a lot. Many weekends I'm sitting there and one of the boats will pump out and I can't even stand sitting on my dock. I've got the diesel spills documented on film many times. So there is a real disadvantage, but that's not really why I wanted to speak here. As an engineer working in stress and strain and structure, one of the things that's really kind of concerned me, that actual property during Irma had a yacht break loose and sunk a boat there, a smaller boat, and then hit another boat. And that was a Category 1 storm with a glancing blow. So we know by code that that property with 572 feet of open water could take a 171-foot boat and still be fine. But I was figuring, you know, as an engineer, let me be conservative, because when you're conservative, it's more meaningful. So I said, what if we put a 120-foot hatteras there? Because 106-foot piles out there, you easily put a 120-foot boat there. They put much larger, it's 140-foot on similar piles a couple doors up from me. But let's just take 120. And I said, what happens if you just take a Category 4 storm? Not even anything bigger, and supposedly storms are getting worse. Did the calculations, and I see that we've got 192,000 pounds of force on that boat that we got to support. Now, let's say that boat didn't skimp on lines. Let's say it went for big ones, 1-inch lines. Let's do the New England lines. Let's do the best ones. They're good for only 25,000 pounds. So, you know, engineering for dynamics, which means when there's movement, which always is in a storm, says you should be doing 2 to 3 times the static load. And I'll try not to be getting nerdy here. I'll try to get to the punchlines. But long story short, on Cat 4, you would need, depending on what standards you want to follow, somewhere between 16 to 24 1-inch lines if the yacht had it. Tied to something that can take that load. Now the problem is, and I know this from my own experience taking piles out, we're actually trying to get our waivers pulled, which the city has never done before. We're trying to remove them because we really don't want the continuation of marinas and pump outs and spills. And we're in that process with the city right now. But I know from the experience when I pulled those piles with the mud bottom, the piles are sunk in 10 feet in the mud bottom. When they unbanded the triple pile, 2 of them fell. So their load carrying capacity is pretty close to 0. They were holding each other up. My neighbor to the north, Gorman, I see his piles leaning right now. He doesn't even have a boat there. But it's a function of deep water and mud. You don't have a good structural bottom. And it's not like a marina where you got a bunch of concrete docks and piles tied together, which is what really gives you strength. You can't get strength with a 5-foot wide dock, not much strength. So let's kind of go to what people say we should worry about, a Category 5 storm. That's 316,000 pounds of static load. Now we need 39 lines. When Irma came in, that's if we had something to tie them to. When Irma came in, I pulled my little 20-foot boat I got at my dock. I looked up the shore and there was minimal to no preparation, not many lines, and we don't have any requirements in the city to force that. We don't even have inspectors. And let's even forget the fact that the structure on these yachts is not set for storms. I mean, you look at the upper decks, they're barely glued on a lot of these large yachts. They're not made to go through hurricanes. So long story short, as a person who lives here and not wanting to have a boat on top of my house, forget storm surge. I'm not even taking those loadings. I'm just taking minimal wind. I don't see any way these structures can handle it. And I think, you know, Tyler, maybe give you more work. You can try to prove that this stress and strain can be handled by these structures. I don't believe it can, not even close. But if we knowingly continue to propagate these big boats without the ability to even withstand what is now not the most significant storms, a Cat 4, you know, a Cat 1, they broke loose, a glancing blow of a Cat 1. I think there's a real liability here to the city and people that approve it for the people that live around there. And again, I'm neglecting storm surge. I'm not taking the 171-foot limit, which would more than double those loads and triple them. I'm just trying to be realistic here.
Okay.
Is there any thought process on trying to say, are we doing anything safe here? Or is there a way we can look into it from a structural engineer? I mean, I can do the work if we need to, but I'd prefer the city to do it, or Tyler or someone else.
As part of the regulatory review, we do have to provide structural drawings. So that is looked at as part of the county's review of the project.
But structural, in that case, is strictly for handling the normal duty load on something like a dock. It doesn't have anything to do with a wind load and storm.
Jim, and if I may, Chair, just to respond, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
To answer your first question about the length of the boat and the theoretical or hypotheticals, the size of the vessels, we're proposing 100-foot vessels, and we're proposing a submerged land lease that we have to stay within, which would not expand beyond the pilings that we're proposing at 106 feet. So there is no proposal to go beyond that submerged land lease that's enforced by DEP, and we will remain within that. As far as the structural integrity of a Cat 5 storm, I don't think the owner is in a position to keep his vessel there during a Cat 5 storm, nor would any of these vessels along here, most likely. But our design is not for a Cat 5 storm. And, you know, our design and the preference by the owner and the applicant is to have a dock and triple pile clusters that would hold his boat safely and securely, not only under normal conditions, but in you know, afternoon thunderstorms, storm events, things like that. As far as hurricane events, typically these vessels, and I'm sure there's others on the board that can explain this process better than I, but they usually leave the area and go somewhere else or find safe harbor farther up the river than this location. So to answer your question.
Tyler, can I respond? None of the boats moved in Irma, and nobody forced them to. So it's a good intention, but it doesn't really happen. And a 100-foot boat would have 85% of that load we just talked about, or what was calculated. So take 85% of 39 lines, whatever that is. It would need 30 lines to hold it against some structure. I'm doing the math in my head, but it's approximate. So I know it's good sense for boats to leave, but we don't enforce. No one in the city goes there and says, move your boat, get it out of here.
But this is Kitty here from US Super Yacht. A lot of those vessels are mandated by their own insurance companies. So they're not able to necessarily be here during hurricane season at certain times, or be able to be in a place they're not completely secured. So
Kitty, it's Roseanne Level here. You're absolutely right. They have an insurance plan, a hurricane plan filed with their insurance company. And if it's all of my vessels in a Category 1 storm, they are mandated to go upriver.
Exactly. And so if they don't do that, then they're personally liable for any damage that happens there, because their insurance companies will not cover that vessel. And this last year, because of COVID, there were exemptions made and extensions made because vessels were not traveling due to travel restrictions. But otherwise, vessels leave this area here because of hurricane season. And so, yeah, I don't see this as a challenge to you from a safety perspective. And if there were, then they would be personally liable for any sort of damage that would happen.
I had a 100-foot burger. I had an insurance plan. I didn't have to leave. And so not every insurance plan makes you do that. And the proof really is, Irma was before COVID, was it not? And the whole 20th Avenue was full of yachts. One of them broke loose and sunk another boat with a glancing Cat 1 at that address. So I don't know how you can say they leave. That's not what happened. And
misfortune happens in bad weather.
It does.
But
Yeah, and there's no, you
not,
cannot mandate everything and you can't legislate everything.
No,
And
but we can't
so-
allow things that we know where you just say, well, you know, it's their problem if their boat lands on your house, because we're allowing that to happen.
So to me, that the unfortunate thing is that you also can't manage that if they have a tree in your neighbor's yard that's too tall, that's not going to, in a wind, blow over and crash your house. I mean, so you can't regulate against every potential possible thing that possibly may happen in any sort of storm. So that's my perspective.
Okay, Mr. Jurnish, do you want to make a final point? Are you there?
I'm sorry, I didn't see I was muted. The point is, though, you're giving permission to put a tall tree next to a house.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Jurnish?
No, I appreciate time to address it. I think we are propagating an issue here that it's not very rewarding to say, well, it's the guy's fault that kept his boat there, but we're going to give him permission to do that length. It seems like we kind of got to take a step back and say, is this a residential neighborhood? Do we want it to be used as a marina with no pump outs? Because those places don't have pump outs, and Roseanne, I know you might, but most don't. Do we want to put in good structure like marinas have if we're going to keep doing this, or do we just kind of want to turn a blind eye to it and go, we won't worry about it?
Understood. Thank you for your time. Okay, we're going to move on. Do we have one more person from the audience? Well, we have a Priscilla Jurnish, but that was Jim that spoke up. Is Priscilla here? Jim, is that your wife?
I am, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so a couple of things. Last year about this time, there was a gentleman that was residing at 736 Northeast 20th Avenue, and you guys approved his waiver, and it went in front of the board, and the board said, no, we're not going to do it. It was denied. And I remember one of the commissioners said, I don't like what's going on over there. Well, why do you think he doesn't like what's going on over there? And I'm going to try to go through this quickly. So as you can see in the picture, over the course of about 20 years, 15, 20 years, one slip at a time, one waiver at a time, you have built a marina. There are the whole span, including both the residential and non-residential, is about a 1,200 foot linear marina there. It can, in just the residential area alone, it can accommodate 18 yachts. That's 2 more than Sunrise Harbor Marina, where Sunrise Harbor Marina probably has people that do supervisory things and regulations, they follow regulations and everything else. Well, we've got the same thing. We're larger along 20th Avenue and we have nothing. Let's just look at the residential area alone. So there's 10 houses in that area. So families and such. And then at the end of the street, south end, there's 256 residents, elderly residents that live at Gateway Terrace. So we've got 33 mega yachts along 20th Avenue, and a mega yacht weighs, I don't know, maybe 500 tons, but let's lowball it. Let's say maybe 400 tons or 800,000 pounds, 12 yachts. That's 9,600,000 pounds of fiberglass and metal that is lined up along the waterway there. So as mentioned, this marina is unmanaged, unregulated, and unmonitored. They do pump outs into the water. They have fuel spills. They have liveaboards. They run charters out of the property. They perform excessive work. They perform toxic repairs without taking environmental precautions. They have marine service vans parked on the street, and they have boats in place that go beyond 30% of the waterway. You can see in the picture. Look in the picture, you can see it. So given the fact that we have climate change, now a lot of these waivers, all these waivers went in place before there was a climate change crisis. But now we have the climate change crisis. And what does that do? There's stronger wind speeds, there's greater occurrence of rapid intensification of hurricanes, there's sea level rise, there's worsened storm surge, there's increased frequency of hurricanes. And let's say we have, it's now October, during the height of the king tides, and we've got a Cat 5 hurricane coming down, direct hit on our street there. What do you think would happen? We're not talking about, a yacht will fall over, or maybe it'll go into a house. We're talking about killing people. So, you know what, if you want to allow this marina to happen on the commercial side, that's fine. But at least at the residential side, I think that we can be more prudent and go with safety over the desires of a single individual who wants to dock mega yachts at his 63-year-old house that has 75 feet along the waterway. All right, I'm done.
Chair, if I may respond quickly.
Yeah, go ahead, Tyler.
So as I mentioned before, the proposal and our permits that were required for this facility require a submerged land lease. And in that submerged land lease, not only will we stay within that boundary, but that submerged land lease has a provision where we're not allowed to have liveaboards. So that is something that is enforced by the state. So we don't anticipate that issue, nor as far as the pumping, that certainly is not allowed per that authorization, where you're pumping sewage into the waterway. Also, as far as the history lesson on the waivers on Northeast 20th, I think it's important to note that the reason we have 125 foot as kind of the standard on this street for what waivers have been granted in the past is due in part and thanks to Mr. Duranich and his previous request when he had a burger that he needed to more bow in order to get ADA access at one point, and then in turn purchased 704, which also has a 125 foot waiver, which is now owned by his wife, Priscilla, which has structures farther than what we're asking for. So the precedent was set by the objector, but at the same time, besides the fact, this area has historically allowed waivers on not just the residential properties, but as you go north through the ROA section of the area on Northeast 20th for those operations, which those are business operations, and has been successful, provided additional tax base to the city. And that's all I have on that.
Thank you, Tyler. Jim, do you have one more point on that, please? Go ahead, Mr. Jernich.
Thank you. I'll try to make it brief.
Thank you.
To be clear, I do have a disabled daughter, which is why I wanted ADA approval to get my daughter on with wheelchairs and everything else, which was quite the battle. So there was a reasonable reason, but I did not choose to build the dockage after I really looked at it. 704, we did not apply for. My neighbor at the time, Benyo, who was related to the Levels at the time, told me he was going to keep his yachts there. And I was, a nice guy. I thought, okay, I'll sign your waiver because you're going to keep your yacht there. And I try to live and let live. And it became a marina. There was up to 80 workers a day that we have on video on up to 3 boats in this place. It was a disaster, which is why we're trying to get the piles pulled right now, and the city doesn't know how to resend the waiver. We're trying to figure it out. So you grow and you mature. And as I watched Irma, which could have been a Cat 5, it was aimed at us. It was one that could have been. And we all know how lucky we got and saw nothing moved. So I don't know where we're thinking this insurance is forcing people to move. They didn't. I lived there. I watched it. I got pictures of it. I think prudence is needed. It's one of the reasons I'm pulling the piles at my wife's property. I don't believe it anymore. I don't think it's safe. This is where people live. This is a place with a bunch of old people right in the line of fire. Forget me. Just look at that. They can't move. They're not going anywhere. And we're throwing a lot of tons at them that I don't see how you can support. The structure won't even support that load. So that's it. But thanks for letting me address you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, George.
This is Andrew. Mr. Smith has his hand raised as well.
Okay, Mr. Smith, if you want to make a point here, but then we're quickly, please, because then we're going to get on to our final person that would like to speak. It's their turn. So
my apologies. I didn't realize I was preempting anybody. This will be really quick. I would just urge the commission and the board to ignore references to precedent here, waivers that have been granted in the past. It is disingenuous to leverage mistakes of the past for the present. And this should be examined on its merits entirely. And that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for making that point. The last person we have from the public is Mr. Michael DiCandina. You there? Yeah, it's Michael DiCandina. Oh. Okay, if we don't have a Michael D here, then who is there anybody else from the public that would a chance to speak? Andres? Mr. Andres, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the owner of 816 20th Avenue. We got granted a waiver back in 2013. Tyler Chappelle and his group was, helping us design it. We like to support Hal Griffin's plans and applications. I do believe it benefits the street. Additionally, to the point of the hurricanes, we have all of our tenants leave during a hurricane, especially Category 5. I don't know anyone who would put those assets on the line, insurance-wise as well. I cannot speak for anyone else, but our leases on the commercial side say they have to leave. I also believe it definitely benefits the street, as the point was raised from the tax money. We pay a lot of property taxes. The additional revenue from those slips, I think, flow back into the investment and, the buildings and the docks and the pavers and all of that stuff. Additionally, not having a dock or pilings, most boats will be docked mat style, which, make the whole dockage approach even less safe. So for that reason, I definitely think it benefits the street. Even though it's residential, I still believe it benefits the street and the area as well. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else? Anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Okay, let's bring it back to the board. We've had some good opinions from the public. We'll open it up to discussion at the board. Anybody have anything to say?
First of all, this is Kitty. I'd like to say thank you to the person in the public that mentioned about precedent. And I can say from my perspective, and I know I've only been on this board for a couple of years, that I know that most of us on the board, we individually evaluate every single issue before us. So precedent really is not part of the decision-making process. So I just want to alleviate that in your mind so that you understand that it's not all about precedent, that we evaluate every single issue before us individually and not as a whole. So just want to say that.
Thank you, Kitty. That's a good point.
So this is Ed Strobel, kind of going back to the residential issue again. This current proposal has 2 slips, I believe.
Correct.
So does this owner actually own 2, or do you expect to rent this to 2 people, to somebody who has 2 yachts of this size? This seems, just for the residential area, very, well, we'll just put it out there. It's basically ready for abuse, in my opinion.
And let me follow up with that, please, because the previous presenter referenced, this is Steve, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Steve, hang on a second before you make your point. Jimmy had his hand up here, so go ahead, Jim, and then we'll get to Steve here.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that, denying this way, I appreciate the objector's thoughts and opinion, on it, but denying this waiver will not change the fact that there's boats being docked there now. This is not to legalize or criminalize, the putting of boats there. And the boats are already there at this house. Putting in the finger pier and additional cluster piles will make it safer than what it is now. It may not be safe enough for a Category 5 hurricane, but it certainly would improve it. So I think that what we're talking about is just putting in this, or just arguing the fact of, that the safety, that it not being safe enough, it is going to make it safer. And the boats would be allowed to be there whether we approve this or not. If we deny it, they can still keep their boats there in a less safe manner than it would be with cluster piles and a finger pier that are there. That's all I got.
Thank you, Jimmy. Steve, sorry, go ahead now.
No, I appreciate it, and I think that was a good point. But one of the folks that called in support mentioned his tenants, and that kind of raised a red flag, because I understood as well that the boats were here for the use of the resident of the property, and hearing that there's an abuse with respect to septic pump outs, etc. Is this a commercial use or is it residential? I don't know if our approval has anything to do with that, but it would be good to understand what it's really being used for.
Tyler, can you?
Yeah, so Mr. Grossauer's property is zoned ROA, which allows tenants and a business use. This is residential RS8, and therefore the applicant, it has to be his boats, which he does have multiple boats, or the person renting the house, if he rents it, would then have to be the owner or owner's rep of that vessel. That's how the city has looked at it in the past.
Thank you, Tyler.
So when the previous gentleman mentioned tenants, would that suggest that the commercial use of other properties might be in violation?
No, that's what I'm saying. His location in the ROA, it allows that type of use, commercial use. It's a building zoning or business zoning. So he would not have the same provisions as this applicant would.
Thank you.
More discussion from the board. If not, then we're going to move to a vote. Okay, let's go ahead and go with a vote. Bridget, why don't we go why don't you call it names individually on the matter?
Well, don't we need a motion to approve or disapprove?
I have a motion.
Yep, I'm sorry. We need to make a motion and you to move to vote. Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. Let's back it up. Again, if there's no more discussion, then is there a motion to move towards the vote?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve this waiver.
I'll second.
Okay.
This is Kitty.
Thank you, Kitty. Thank you, Jimmy. Sorry guys for jumping the gun there. Bridget?
I'm ready.
You go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Mr. Rotella.
I approve.
Yes. Mr. Witten.
Approve. Thank you.
Ms. Chiarelli.
Robin, you might be on mute. I don't see her.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to her.
Maybe we'll circle back with her.
Okay, yeah. Mr. Barry,
Approve.
Mr. Walker,
Approve.
Ms. Lovell,
Approve.
Ms. McGowan,
Approve.
Mr. Flanagan,
Yes, approve.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Yes, approve.
Thank you. Mr. Harrison.
Approve.
Thank you. Vice Chair Strobel.
Disapprove.
That's a no.
That's a no.
And thank you. And Mr. Chair Henderson.
I approve.
Okay, and the motion passes. I'm going to show Ms. Chiarelli as staying out of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Okay.
Thank you, board. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody from the public that participated. We're going to move on. Agenda number 7. We're into old business and new business. Does anybody have any old business they'd like to discuss? Does anybody have any new business they'd like to discuss?
One of the things.
Hold on a second.
My own.
Mr. Walker, if you could turn down the speaker in this room. It's causing a feedback.
There we go. I think that's better. Yeah, go ahead, Norm.
Yeah, now that that's over with, the voting on that building. One of the things that I think that we need to consider when I was running a barge up and down on the New River, we look at the distance when we get this waiver. If it's 300 feet, they say, okay, fine, we can get out to 30%. What I don't think a lot of us realize is the channel may not be where we think it is in the center of that river. I mean, when I was running a barge, I found out on this one right now, when you come out of the intercoastal waterway in the middle river, that bend right before you get to the Las Olas Marina, the channel is actually 10 feet off the shore. If that resident decided to put, it's plenty wide enough where the river is, but if that resident decided to put the dock out beyond the 30 feet stuff over there, he would be in the channel. And the other side of the river is actually shallow. Another example is up by Cooley's Landing. We had an individual come in, wanted to put pilings 65 feet out in river. Actually, he had the entire channel is where he wanted to put those pilings. So maybe what we need to do is not just consider the distance of the width of the waterway, but also maybe where the channel actually runs. That could make a difference on where we're actually going to put a dock or how many times pilings are out. And I want to make the board aware that if you ever take a sounding when you're going up, you find out that that channel does not run in the middle of the New River, nor does it run in the middle of the intercoastal waterway. Some places it varies, like I said, less than 10 feet off of the shoreline. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Norbert. Good point. Anybody else with some new business? Okay, if we don't, then I'll see if we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
A second there. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. Night.
Thanks, guys. Thanks all to the public that came out.
Thank you, guys.